So welcome to this second part of our talk this morning, our program this morning. My name is Anna Larsson. I'm Communications Director for World Shipping Council. And what we'll be having right now, which you'll be enjoying, is a conversation with carriers. So one of our aims with this day today is to show what is actually happening with the industry and within the industry on the path to decarbonization. So I would like to invite up first Mr. Claudio Abbate. He's Group VP Maritime Policy and Government Affairs for MSC. Rasmus, Hald Philipsen, welcome.
Thank you.
Regulatory Affairs Officer for AP Moller Maersk. And Roger Strevens, please join us. VP of Global Sustainability for Wallenius Wilhelmsen. I want forward so we can get picked up by the microphones. Gentlemen, we're talking about decarbonization today, and in the room over there we have a whole sort of exhibition of what's happening in the industry already on these matters. And to get us started, I would like to ask you to give us all a short introduction into what your company's strategy is when it comes to the decarbonization of shipping. Roger, will you kick us off?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you very much, everybody, for participating in this event. Decarbonization is the biggest single challenge and opportunity that we face as a company. And I think the reason for that is that for all of the unknowns and the uncertainties that we face, there will be shipping after this decarbonization transition. And so for us that means that it's a question not just of technologies, it's a question of our approach, our corporate mentality to this. So we think that this is a challenge that it's bigger than our company. I think it's bigger than any company, really. And so partnership is a very important piece. Innovation, taking the initiative, is a huge part of our approach as well. We need to attract innovators to our business. We want to be part of the regulatory process because we're looking for outcomes that will deliver as much change for as little cost and disruption as is possible. So in broad outline, that's how we're seeing this, we're approaching this as an organization.
Yeah, good morning everybody. I agree with Roger. Decarbonization is really the big issues we have at our hands today, and we need. When we talk about decarbonization, it's very easy. It's easier to think about the future and the ships of the future, the alternative fuels of the future, and so on. But we are bearing in mind the fact that we have an existing fleet of more than 500 ships, and we need to secure our life and business. And so we are very, very committed on renewing and decarbonize our existing fleet. And that is the main point that we might have. And we do this through, of course, operational issues aspect, but that is not enough. So we need to look around for partners, ideas, R&D, and so on.
Good. Thank you so much for being here, all of you, first of all. At AP Moller Maersk, we emit 36 million tons of CO2 every year. That's quite a lot for those of you who have not much of an idea of whether that's a lot or not. So we think we have a big problem at our hand. And of course, if we look at our industry and society in a wider perspective, the same is the case. And since we're a large part of the problem, we like to think that we should also be a large part of the solution. And to that end, we've introduced a net zero target for 2040. And we've already ordered 13 methanol vessels, which will be almost carbon neutral vessels operating on green fuels. You can read more on them on the poster, see what they look like. All those things are things we can do today, and as we see it, it's important that while we can look at what we can do in the future, we should be careful that we don't spend too much time looking at what we can do in the future, and that we do something today. And there is a lot we can do today. For us as a company, we are in an unprecedented time in many ways for shipping, but we're also in an unprecedented time in the sense that we have the technology to deliver very large emissions reductions today. We have the means to do so, quite frankly, and we can do so right now. So seen from our point of view, it's all about getting started now, and we have an ambition that by 2030 we will transport 25% of our fuel. Will be green fuel. So when we move containers around the world, a fourth of that will be using green fuel. That's of course a significant challenge. We'll need a lot of fuel that we don't have today, but we're pretty confident that we can get there.
Thank you. 25%. That's quite a bit in a short horizon, and I think we all know it's a climate imperative that we actually get this process going and that we get to zero as quickly as possible. You can all debate the targets, etc., but I think we just need to move as fast as we can. And as you've just described, you're already investing in different kinds of technology to try to do something already now. So, you know, you're already investing, we already know the goal. What role does actually climate regulation play in your decisions going forward and in your strategies going forward?
Well, it's very important. I must say that the words by Magda were exactly matching with what I had in mind on this subject. Because despite of the willingness of the single company to do something for the decarbonization, like we do, we have a plan for a zero emission ship by 2030, or a reduction in EOI by 70% by 2045. Regardless of our plans, we believe that a robust, implementable and feasible framework of legislation is needed to guarantee also the level playing field. Certainty, because we Magda mentioned specifically ETS and FuelEU Maritime, but without the AFIR and RED working properly in the future, this piece of legislation are only taxations. That's it. So we need a robust, implementable, feasible, and achievable target. So we are not refusing. Of course, we are part of the society, and we want to do our share, and we have a responsibility on that, but we need also clear vision and harmonized requirements, and possibly international requirements.
So I think you, Claudio, said something very that I very much agree with on society and our role as companies in that regard, and that brings me back to when we were founded as a company at Maersk in 1904 by A.P. Moller, which is the first half of our name. That's often left out because it gets very long. He was very concerned with that we should be a useful company, and he used the phrase useful company, which sounds a bit curious, and he used it in the wider sense that of course we should be a useful company to shareholders and to the employees and to the economy as a wider sense in transporting goods across the world, but we should also be a useful company in the sense that we give something back to society. And I think our efforts on decarbonization, on reducing our emissions, on helping create that transition in the industry, I think that's a place where we can really be a useful company to society in doing something about this big decarbonization challenge that we have at hand.
So we all talked about the climate imperative, that we need to play our part as an industry and as companies in combating. And you asked, well, what role does regulation take? And I think where regulation can really help most is in changing the frame of reference that we operate in. And that frame of reference has three corners to it. There's regulation, there's innovation, which, you know, because there's no law of physics to say that the more sustainable solutions are always more expensive, although the transition cost can be high. And then the third piece is demand. And there is a growing demand signal from the market, from the investor side, but it's still kind of the junior part in this. The big piece is regulation, and it can make more sustainable solutions competitive compared to what we have today. And we've seen that this is not theory, this works. If you look at the Sulfur 2020 global cap change, basically what happened was that the major fuel of most of the industry changed overnight to a product which is, as everybody knows this, is more expensive. Why did that happen? It happened because regulation shifted the frame of reference. So that's where good regulation can really contribute to this. We depend on it.
Yeah. Level playing field and making sure that everybody can
Yeah.
come along, and not only the
Exactly.
front runners.
Exactly, because good regulation, writing good regulation is half of the half of the task. Making sure that it's evenly and effectively enforced, which was fortunately how it played out in the end with sulphur. That's essential, and so it was really excellent. That Magda put such an emphasis on that aspect of the climate regulation challenge, because the stakes are high.
Indeed. Well, we have quite a lot of regulation underway on the environmental side. We have the EU Green Deal at the table, as Magda talked about. The IMO, in just a week or two, will be making more progress on the global regulations. And you've all three been part of drawing up the 6 critical pathways. That's the WSC paper into the IMO, and what we see as the most important pathways and the package of pathways really that need to be looked at. When it comes to what's going to be happening over the next few months, what regulatory developments do you think will be most important?
If I focus on the Green Deal, because I think that makes a lot of sense since we have this thing in the background here. I think we've come a long way already in the process in ensuring that there is this alignment that Magda spoke about between the different pieces of regulation. And it looks like we will have the relevant greenhouse gases for shipping included. So we will have a regulatory framework that looks not only at CO2, which is an important greenhouse gas, but also at other important and potent greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide as the 2 most important examples. I think where I might be a little more concerned is on whether there is enough of a life cycle analysis element, especially when it comes to the emissions trading system. If we have a carbon price that does not differentiate between sustainable and non-sustainable fuels, for all sorts of perhaps valid reasons. But if there's no distinction between the 2 fuel types, then we're not pricing pollution. And then I think we're in a very tricky situation that we should try and get out of as soon as possible.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because if we don't have that proper accounting for emissions in legislation, then you risk creating a false market signal for what's actually a solution that contributes to addressing this. To your question on what's the most important piece, I think it's hard to pick one, because it'll also vary according to where you operate and individual company circumstances. But one of the big pieces for us is efforts relating to putting a price on carbon, and we think that needs to happen to enable that frame of reference to move. Because the newer solutions, they do come at a higher cost. Maybe they will, as the industrial scale increases, they become more cost competitive in simple terms today. But that's not going to be the case, at least initially. And so we need that global measure on carbon pricing at a significant enough level to actually create behavioural change in the industry. That's an enormously important part. The EU ETS will play a part towards that, but we also need action that's aligned action at the global level too.
So one piece of the critical pathways, just to follow up on the carbon price question, is also about buy downs and sort of additional financial incentives. Any thoughts around that?
I think that we need to build capacity for new kinds of fuels, and I think that there will be that development cost for creating that capacity. That's going to need some assistance to actually to achieve a level of critical mass that then enables it to become a globally effective solution.
Thank you.
If I have to mention two points that we believe that are very important. One, I already mentioned the R&D, the importance of R&D. And if you have time and willingness to read or take a look at the study that has been done by Ricardo and is contained in a submission that the World Shipping Council sponsored to MEPC 7771, I think, is the number. You immediately realize the need for supporting from the economical point of view the R&D for helping us in our decarbonization path. So there are that is the point in which I wanted to set a little bit the attention of the audience, because the R&D, unfortunately, the industry proposed a sort of R&D framework at IMO with IMRB, but there was no so much support at IMO. Hopefully, more support will come from the new legislation, both ETS and the fuel maritime, and there is a mention to Innovation Fund or Ocean Fund, depending on the proposal. But I would say that that is our opinion. We need to be sure that the funding would be more maritime focused, rather than to have a innovation fund that is general. So because our sector is very hard to abate, the emissions for our sector are very hard to put down, and so we need more support. A second point I wanted to mention is the possibility that in the future we will have a sort of new building standard that will, let me say, require that the ships built on or after a certain date will be either capable of running on alternative fuels, or the span of different alternative fuels, or specifically they are built for an alternative fuel rather than a fossil fuel. So that is would be important, but could not be successful without the supporting instrument that guarantee that the fuels and infrastructure will be available at that specific date. So we needed to, but again, the package will work if all the pieces of the package itself they work. So we need technology, but we need also fuel and infrastructures. Otherwise, we cannot meet our goals.
I'd like to build on to the comments that you've made, because you're absolutely, I couldn't agree more, that we need many different elements to come together to make a solution. But this isn't going to happen at the same rate on every trade lane in the world. There are specific trade lanes where the conditions are more advanced for sort of the earlier adoption of novel technologies, novel propulsion solutions. So we're talking really about the need to have policy that develops stimulates the introduction of green corridors. And one of our flagship decarbonisation initiative, it's not the only one that we have, but it's the main one, is a wind powered vessel, ro-ro vessel. There's a poster of this vessel that's demonstrated on display. And this vessel is technically it's going to be a huge challenge, but I think we are approaching the finalization of the design. The other major part to actually make this happen is to develop a viable business case for this vessel, and that will entail a sort of a rethinking of the outbound supply chain and how that it's managed. It doesn't mean necessarily that cargo will take longer to get to its final destination, and I don't mean necessarily at port, but we have to recognize that we are part of a logistics chain, and we need to take a holistic view of that system. It makes sense to look at individual links, but we also need to look at the overall system.
So actually coming back to a lot of what we're talking about today, it's partnerships, right? So partnerships our focus here a lot of the time is on the regulatory and the business side. But of course also the customer comes in, because not many of the changes are so big that, as you say, you need to rethink the whole supply chain and what your actual requirements are in a way. Thank you.